We're recording.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. We could go through and deal with the minutes of the last meeting if people are so inclined. At this point, I'm so discouraged about the state of minutes keeping in these meetings that it seems just a waste of time. I'm only hopeful no one reads them because they just don't reflect in many important points what took place at the meeting, and that's I'm not happy about that being the public record, but there doesn't seem to be. It seems unlikely to change. So let's pass. Does anyone wish to move to accept the minutes?
I will move.
It has been moved. We have a second. I see no point for discussion unless someone has a point they would wish to raise. Any corrections for the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Okay, we're good. All right, that was an easy one. Okay, reviewing our business for the rest of our term. Thanks to the work of Sergeant Jordan, we have the framework for a lot of a policy for the department. It is lacking some features, which I will discuss, that we may not be able to finalize before this subcommittee's mandate runs out. But we, I think, can move them forward to the point where they can be picked up by the policy sergeant and then completed by the work of the commission itself. Okay. The first point that I believe we have already agreed on, but I just want to be sure. We all agree that the department needs a written policy covering all the aspects of officer mental health and well-being. No objections. Good.
So are we trying to define all of the aspects, or are we saying that it is certainly important to cover as many of the aspects as we're aware of?
My idea is that the policy would cover both the wellness aspects, which are, you all have a copy of the draft policy 1021 that Sergeant Jordan put together. You did receive that in your packets?
I forgot. I have to click on the link.
Commissioner Folks?
I'm looking for it as well. Just a moment.
Did you remember receiving them?
Yeah, I have it in my inbox. I just have not gotten that.
It
clicked.
covers much of what would be in the final policy. That is to say, the purpose and scope, there's a question of a wellness coordinator, which we will have to discuss in a few minutes. But training, the audit, and the wellness program itself with its various aspects, like the peer resiliency, the peer support and resiliency team, on-duty exercise, the employee assistance program, chaplain program, dog support program, continuing education, and there's about 3 or 4 others, which I put on my other copy of this. Yeah, EMDR, massage chairs, and alpha stim are all various techniques that are used for reducing stress and policy around using these at work. And then there is the question of the qualified mental health professional. And this, I think we should discuss tonight. And then there is the longer range question which Sergeant Jordan and I discussed, and we agreed was probably best handled by a different body with a broader constituency, namely to involve the chief's office, the union, the city attorney's office, a mental health professional, and that is the question of administrative leave for incidents or situations other than officer-involved shootings. And that's a discussion that she thought was best carried out outside of this subcommittee, and I tend to agree. Unless there is strong disagreement from other members.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I anticipate some resistance bringing all of those parties to a table.
Resistance from some of the parties
Yes.
who just don't want to sit in another meeting. Possibly. Nonetheless, I think that it is something that could be more usefully discussed with more of the various constituencies involved than us just sitting here spinning ideas off the top of our heads about it. I don't feel qualified. I don't know all the different aspects and implications of such a policy. And I would like to be part of such a discussion, but not just doing it alone with the three of us.
I with our academy, we had PCERT come and talk with us last week. And I learned a bunch, which was amazing. And it sounds like they are working towards finding somebody who is knowledgeable and skilled within the first responder field as a whole, and that understanding and the work they do and the issues that come about with being a first responder. So I'm excited to have a PCERT member join us. Jeremy, I'm sad you're leaving us, but I think with that conversation, we can get a lot more detailed. And I do think that a generalized policy on well-being, there's going to be things that I think the department will do within itself more case by case, like person by person. Does that make sense? But an overarching platform and policy that outlines maybe some fundamentals, those basic things that folks need to have, or research or search, not research. I'm not articulating well. I like
Take
the
your time.
foundational policy piece, that structure of the wellness and the mental health and all of that. And I think, Jack, you've done a lot of research on this with other agencies, correct?
Correct.
And you've talked with Sergeant Jordan. Has there been any movement, or I guess, am I jumping ahead here?
Movement on what?
Next steps on finding a provider.
Okay, that's the question of having an on-site mental health professional. That's what you're discussing?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
That's a major one. And that is one of the aspects of this that has to be clarified, and we need to come up with a position on. What I'm going to suggest is that okay, here's the way I see it, what our work for the next period. Because Sergeant Jordan is not going to be available to us, we will have Sergeant McCauley, but I don't know the extent to which Sergeant McCauley will have time to work up policy for our consideration, or whether we would be better off waiting on the development of written policy, developing further what Sergeant Jordan has done on putting together 1021, which is all new policy. We might do better waiting for her return to finish that. And that we can find out when Sergeant McCauley becomes available. Go ahead, Jeremy.
So what I understand in and this is brand new information that I got like 2 minutes before signing into this meeting, is that your sergeant is coming in with the intention of helping finalize that policy for you.
Okay, better and better,
So-
said the old one.
So, if that helps, that's my understanding, that's, Sergeant's plan.
Okay, well, as soon as we see the sergeant, we can discuss it and we'll have a
There you go.
better, a clearer picture, but that's very good news.
Things are
Oh.
moving quick these days, so
What's that?
things are moving quickly these days.
Things are moving remarkably quickly. Sometimes I feel like they're moving under our feet. Okay. Let's then address the question of the qualified mental health professional staff. There are essentially two very separate approaches to this. One of which is to have a qualified mental health professional who works for the department, is located in the headquarters for drop-in anytime by officers who need to see them, and under whatever other circumstances officers will see this person. They're there, they are known, they work for the department. The other approach is to have on site a qualified social worker who can take officers when they come in saying, I have a problem, get some picture of what they need, and refer them to an outside mental health professional. The main objection to the in-house mental health professional that I've heard from several places, both inside and outside of the department, are confidentiality. The confidentiality concerns are the chief obstacle, wrong word, the main obstacle to officers seeking help from a mental health professional. Go ahead, Commissioner Folks.
So, and please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is there is a patient confidentiality that goes into play with that, and that really disclosure would only need to be made if there was a concern of harm to themselves or others.
This is all correct in terms of the written law, rules, procedures.
Right.
That's not the problem. The problem is the perception that while the laws, rules, and procedures say one thing, in fact, talk happens. And when the mental health professional is not someone chosen directly by the officer who they have a relationship with and works for the officer, but works for the department, there is the perception that there may be some leakage of information between the professional person and the chief's office or the department in some form. I know there are, the peer support system is all based on confidentiality. And I have heard that there are concerns about this as well. Not because of anything formal that happens, but because of the informal lower level. But because this perception is there, it's still perceived as a problem, even though on the books, it's all clean.
So I would say that the confidentiality goes beyond whatever the confidentiality concern is in addition to the perception concern, because if you are walking in through the door of a therapist's office and all of your coworkers are also seeing that and sharing that with their coworkers, it's very much like being in school and someone sees you walking into the principal's office. And so even though, yes, technically, legally speaking, there is a whole bunch of documents requiring the confidentiality aspect, I personally don't think that I would go see a mental health professional that was embedded in the office where I worked. I would prefer to go offsite to see them and run much less of a risk of running into somebody in the parking lot or in the hallway or in the waiting room.
Now, And I thank you. That was very helpful. That's a further part of it. Here's the other side. The other side, as I perceive it, is that Chief Skinner knows what he wants to do in this regard. He has a person in mind. He has the funding identified. And when I talked to him after the last meeting of the commission, he understood that there was this other approach and that the main objection to the on-site mental health professional was confidentiality concerns. And he said, well, let's just try it and see if it works. And he squared his shoulders and planted his feet. And I had the impression that he has made his mind up that this is what he would like to do. Now, it has been said that I have a tendency to think I'm the smartest person in whatever room I walk into, which I will not entirely deny, but I do not believe I am the best informed person in every room I walk into. And I do believe that the chief knows a good deal more about the problems with confidentiality and trust inside the department. I have my doubts. I have my concerns, but I am not willing in this subcommittee to propose that we endorse a different approach than that one that the chief seems ready to implement. I see potential problems, but I don't want to stand in the way because of the three options, having an in-house mental health professional, having an in-house referral service, or having none of the above, I like the in-house mental health professional approach much better than the none of the above.
And the mental health professional could, sorry, I didn't stop. May I speak?
Oh, please.
Thank you.
Please.
The QMHP could also be that social service connector. They don't necessarily have to be their direct mental health connector, but they can be if there is a moment of crisis and need. And accessibility wise, yeah, I absolutely see what Chair Commissioner Hawkins is saying about, and Jack, you've mentioned, or Commissioner Rady, you've mentioned this, the optics of it, being seen, accessing that person at any given time. But there's other ways we could look at that too, right? I mean, they could call in from their rig. They could essentially maybe schedule a meet outside somewhere, an off-site visit. So I could see getting creative with it. And I do think that having a QMHP to start, I kind of agree with that. I mean, if all else fails, I would be more likely to go to somebody I know who is, I think the biggest thing is finding somebody who is knowledgeable and aware of first responders issues. I think that would be the biggest barrier, is finding somebody who's knowledgeable, because it sounds like they're few and far between. And is there somebody locally that could actually fill that role and have that understanding and that background knowledge that we non-responders have?
I believe the chief has someone,
You mentioned that.
definitely has a candidate in mind who is
Okay.
qualified.
Okay.
By the way, I found out some information from Sergeant Jordan that is useful in regard to your last point you made about the availability. She talked to the other Macaulay and got the information that there are 10 currently on the list who are qualified, have background in dealing with first responders, and that of these, 3 or 4 have notified the department that if there is an incident, a major incident, they will clear their schedule and make emergency responders first priority, so that they can get in immediately if need be. So I think with a patient base of around 300, and I got the report of the peer support, I see the hand, I will call on you in a second. That there were last year, 78 call outs for peer support, 18 of which resulted in department member taking time off, and 11 critical incident stress debriefs. It seems to me, from my background, what I know about medical practices, that 10 practitioners is quite an adequate number for a patient base potentially of 300, all of whom are not going to require the services at the same time. Where did that leave us? I'm sorry. Okay. Commissioner Hawkins, do you have anything you would like to add on the question of what we should recommend regarding an on-site mental health professional?
I actually am curious, do we need to make a recommendation at all? Because I thought we were aiming more to have a professional who is dedicated to EPD. I think that trying to pigeonhole somebody who can be on site at EPD limits the scope of their practice, because at least until things pick up at EPD, they're likely to still have a client base of their own. And there may be other things that we're not even considering. So are we required at all to make a recommendation of where this QMHP should practice from? Or can we just we can go along with what the chief says, and we're not going to argue with them, but we don't necessarily have to make that our recommendation either.
So we could make a general recommendation. It would be, we look very positively on the department hiring a qualified mental health professional, and how they implement that, exactly how it's going to work, and where they will practice is up to the department to determine, and not a policy question that we need to chime in on. Is that essentially what you're saying? Did I get that?
You know, either that, or if, for example, there was the option of 1 in 10 who are under contract with EPD and are available to drop things at any drop of, or pick up things at the drop of a hat. Because I'm thinking in terms of on-call situations, if that person in-house needs to take a vacation, I like the idea of having additional coverage. Now, if the chief has already identified somebody and has things in motion, then, I mean, that's already much better than what we currently have. So I certainly don't want to upset the apple cart there. I personally would steer away from saying, this is what you do, and here's how I think you should do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Commissioner folks?
You had answered my last question. So, well, gosh, where does that put us? If they're already jumping ahead and doing all of this, what do we do as our commission?
Well, the problem has been all along that the department has been doing, particularly since Chief Skinner came in, has been doing many of these things to support officer mental health and wellness. But it's never been written down as a policy. Our job is policy, so we are trying to pull all of this together in policy.
Okay.
The main reason for that is, as all these efforts have gone up considerably since Chief Skinner came aboard, Chief Skinner will be leaving us in 2 years. Who comes next? If there's no policy written down, we could have another chief who is all for it and really pushes it, and we could have a chief who thinks it's irrelevant and a waste, and just being soft, don't do that stuff. And if we've got it written down, it's more likely to endure. So that's the reason for doing this.
So let me add to that, Commissioner Folks, because our job as dictated by City Council is recommending policy to the chiefs. And everybody at City Council knows it takes a while to get a policy formed and sent and submitted and approved and everything like that. So the work of this subcommittee, this will be one of our end products, but city council is well aware that it has taken time and a lot of moving bodies to get this going. It's also a win-win for both of us, even though the chief is already moving on it, because it's a win for him because he's obviously proactive in looking out for the welfare of his officers. And it's a win for us because we're doing what we have been charged by the city council to do. We actually have a finished work product that we can take. In a lot of ways, we can take credit for it and consider it our contribution, our legacy as the years go on and they cycle through more chiefs and more officers and things like that. It's a lot like that culture audit that we recommended last year that the chief get for EPD. Even though he was already moving on it by the time we presented the recommendation to city council, it still goes in the record that it was a recommendation from police commission. So there's, in this particular case, I don't see a huge downside to us catching up to what the chief is already doing. If we were going against what the chief is doing, then we'd have a whole lot more to talk about. But in this case, it shows solidarity between us and the executive of the police department.
Thank you both. It's helped put some of the puzzle pieces together, and that makes total sense that we're helping to instill or recommend policy, you know, for here and future folks coming into EPD. Okay, cool. So Sergeant,
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so Sergeant Jordan is starting to work on this specific policy. And Sergeant Jordan is out for a bit.
That's correct.
10/21.
Sergeant Jordan has written up a draft policy that covers the several different aspects of what we were talking about. It does not cover the question of admin leave. It does not cover the question of an on-site professional. The admin leave thing, I think I covered. One thing, when you read the draft 1021 policy, there's one thing in it that I think is going to have to be changed, because everybody told me when I raised it that no, there is no way that there is a slot open in the department for someone to head this program. But in fact, Sergeant McCauley is doing it along with Emily McCauley, and I don't care what they're called. Just the policy can't call for a director if there is not going to be someone wearing that hat. That's just a question of language, though. As long as someone is responsible for the program and the whole program, I'm happy. Whether that's works for Sergeant McCauley, whether that's just throwing more, work on his shoulders, I don't know. We will hopefully find out from him. But beyond that, I found nothing in the proposed policy draft that I had a problem with. It's very straightforward. Anybody left in the room? You and me, Jeremy. Hi.
Sorry, I'm currently trying to make dinner right now too. I love what Sergeant Jordan has come up with as a work product. I would love to put this in front of Police Commission at the next meeting so that it can be part of the package that gets reported to City Council in June. Even though we know it may not be a finished product, but at least for Police Commission to have an idea of what we are working on and how close we are to having it finished product, I would love to put eyes on it, and they may have really great ideas as well. I think things like the definition of a QMHP and where that person is located can certainly be addendums afterwards if there is a need to mandate either one of those things. But right now, Sergeant Jordan has done a fantastic job of building out the bones of what the subcommittee has been charged with doing.
Yeah. By the way, in terms of the commission getting credit for the policy or who gets credit for the policy, I go by Sojourner Truth's comment that it's amazing what you can get done if you don't care who gets the credit for it. That's
This is
my
true, but I also want the police commission to take the credit for this. Right now, with the way the city budget is going, I feel very much a need to justify our existence, and this is one of the things that will help do that.
Okay, well, and I will have a draft of our committee's report available in the next 2 weeks. I will have it circulated to the two of you to look at and tell me what I need to change. And then it will go to be included in the commission's report to city council whenever that happens.
Okay.
But I should have it within 2 weeks. I met with Commissioner Hawkins and we discussed the past work of the committee that I was not familiar with, and I don't see any problems filling a page with this report.
And it's a PowerPoint page, not even a Word page. So really, the fewer
I
words
won't
you can
deal with
have, the
PowerPoint.
the happier they are.
During the Iraq invasion, there was one division in the American Army where the commanding general lined up his officers and said, all right, there will be no more PowerPoints done in this division. You either write a report that someone can read and make sense, or just tell it to me in a few words. Don't put bullet points on a screen to be read off. That ain't thinking, boys. Okay. Do we have further to deal with? Jeremy, have I missed something?
Well, let me just do a quick review of your, the main intention of this meeting was to do a business status to date, and it seems like you have what you need to move forward with the report. Other than that, is there any new business that needs to be considered? And the other thing I should probably mention to you is that you do have one attendee out there in the office, or out there in the
Oh, would they care to speak to us?
well, it's up to you, chair, so.
Yeah, as the chair, if we have an observer from the public here, please, if you would like to speak up, this is a great time.
You want to invite them to raise their hand?
I would invite them to raise their hand. Or they can raise their foot if it's more convenient. I don't care. Hello?
Not seeing a hand raised at this time.
Okay. You can put something in the chat if you like, or send us an email, but thank you for coming on, watching our committee. Does anyone else have anything new to raise? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Actually, Jack, I think we need to have a motion to present the draft policy before police commission.
I will entertain such a motion. Would you
So
care to
moved.
make it? Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, so it is moved and seconded that we present to the next police commission meeting a copy of draft policy 1021 dealing with law enforcement, mental health, and wellness. All in favor? Jeremy, you have a question.
I do, just on a technicality. We have an agenda that's set for that. So Jensina, did you want to discuss, are you going to want to discuss adjusting the agenda are we referring to the April 10 meeting? Or when you say the next meeting, were you thinking the one after that? Reason being is the agenda gets posted and publicly tomorrow. So if we're going to make an adjustment, we had to do that very quickly.
Are there committee reports on the agenda?
Well, so we do have room for the LAMHW subcommittee. However, what we did not build in time for was discussion of policy. And if we're going to include it in the packet and expect discussion as well, we need to find time for that. So our options is Jeremy and I scramble together first thing tomorrow morning to rebuild the agenda. So that's
Okay.
option one. Option two is we just include the the policy in the packet, but we do not make room for discussion, but then we can't really move it we can't move it forward at police commission either if we don't have discussion. Or third, we take it out completely and wait until a work retreat, but that's not really a great place for it either. Amelia, I saw your hand.
So
I did too.
we may I ask, when are we waiting for Sergeant Jordan to return?
After her baby and her maternal leave.
Oh,
Which,
okay.
of course, in a civilized country would be a year, but I don't think she's getting that much.
Okay, so it will be a few months. I would love to be able to talk with Sergeant Jordan and build on what is already there. But if we're just looking at presenting it like, hey, this is bare bones what started, I think without discussion would be fine because there's still work to be done, obviously. I think that would be all right.
I think it would be fine for us to have it in the packet to let the commission know, here's where we're at. This is how far we've gotten. We actually have something. It's not ready yet. I don't see any point in discussing it at the next commission meeting.
Here's the thing though, Jack, is that we can't, until police commission votes on it, we can't move it forward to the city or to the chief. Even though the chief knows
Right,
we're working
I
on it,
understand
even
that.
though he knows all of that. And we are trying to get it before city council in June. And because
We're trying
May
to
is a
get
work
this
retreat,
policy before city council in June?
at least the draft.
Really?
That
That was not my thought.
okay.
Let's-
So
let's
you
discuss
are the
this.
chair of the subcommittee. What we need to do though is we need to have a work product to show them, even if it's a work in progress. And so
Jeremy,
we could say we
looking-
have a draft policy, but it hasn't gone to police commission in general yet. Yeah, Jeremy.
Well, it's not. I don't know what's been happening in the past couple of years, but I don't know of ever taking a policy in front of council. Generally, we take a synopsis of the work completed.
Right.
So I think what Jack is providing in regarding the report that he's gonna be putting together in the next 2 weeks is probably sufficient to take to council. And in the meantime, you could of course show the policy to the police commission to glean or provide feedback. So you could just show them that this is your progress, because it sounds like you're gonna be working with Sergeant McCulley to fine tune it. And then you can still go to council with a synopsis of the work that you've completed, that you have a draft that is nearing being finalized. And I think that's fine, because you can report that the subcommittee performed its function. And you can thank them for the 2 years extension that they had given you. So I think it ties it up.
So the synopsis though, if it's included in the presentation that's built, police commission in general has to approve that presentation. So if they're looking at it and there's reference to a policy that they haven't seen, are they going to object?
So
Here's what I'm thinking. Wait. One, the draft policy acknowledged as incomplete and are starting is distributed to the commission for the purpose of letting them know how we're doing, what's coming, and that they will have policy to discuss at the commission at some point in the future, within some months. When exactly? And I see no point in having any discussion at the commission on this when it is not finalized, when it is not in more complete form. When it is in complete form as a draft, then it goes to commission. From there, it will go eventually, if we approve something, that goes to the chief and goes to the council, wherever it goes. I don't think we need to report beyond the 1 page I'm going to write to the city council on what we've gotten accomplished in the subcommittee by showing them the draft. I don't think that goes there until it's, does that make sense? It seems to me we're putting the cart before the horse, trying to get something in the way of policy to show to the city council before summer.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
So the way I see it is, this is great, because you're gonna be able to show that you have a product that is nearing completion, that you can include within the packet. Jack can use the 10 minutes that he already has allotted within the schedule to discuss the work that has been completed, to let the policy team, or sorry, not policy team, let the police commission see that work that has been completed. In May, you're gonna do your planning retreat. In June, his report is going to be compiled into your biennial report to go to council for police commission review. So they're going to see his Jack's one page, the work you've completed. They will have seen that policy. They will know that there's going to be more work to come on that policy. I mean, you could even work on that policy in the month of June, assuming there's time so as long as and so then you could fine tune that message for council at that time, and then that finalized report gets buttoned up in June and sent to council for your presentation. It's been done before. It doesn't mean that you have to do it that way, but
I see where you both are going with that, and I will absolutely defer to the subcommittee chair. I will say that it has been my experience that few of the commissioners will read what's in the packet. And so presenting a slide that we're going to be presenting to city council that references a policy that we're working on, I can see some of them saying, hold on, we never reviewed that. And so whether it's a showstopper in April or a showstopper in June, I see it being a showstopper.
Which show?
The police commission meeting.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, I think, is that there could be objection in the police commission to telling city council we have a draft that we're working on, because the draft has not yet been finalized by the commission. But because the possibility, I guess, the commission could reject the entire draft. Is that, and that's,
they may.
Yeah, of course. Jeremy.
friendly amendment to your idea here. So Jensina, what if you allocate and we find another 5 minutes to take from each of the other two presentations? So you have like a 20-minute, bring the policy in front of the commission, let them know this is a very rudimentary draft. So it would include Jack's 10 minutes to say, this is what we've done so far. And then you would have 10 minutes to provide, preliminary thoughts on the draft as we're moving quickly. And we're going to be moving with Sergeant McCulley to provide you a more completed draft in June. Well, we're finalizing, as well as a final report on this work to be included, the report to be included in the final report to council. And so that way, the police commission can weigh in and say, and take ownership of whether they want to move forward with it or not. And so that way there isn't a big surprise in June where you're having to change the complete narrative. It's a fine tune in June. What do you think?
It strikes me that anyone who would object to our reporting that we have worked up a draft that has not yet been approved or discussed by the commission, and we're just reporting that we've gotten that far, should have it explained to them that didn't say the commission has approved a policy or is going to approve a policy, just that we have got a draft worked up, and that's where we've reached. We are not assuming that the commission is going to approve it. We are just saying that's where we've gotten to. And that the normal functioning of the commission is that anything that goes out as policy is going to have to be discussed, amended, argued about for months. And that we're not presuming this is it just because it's been written down. I would say if anyone raises such an objection, we just tell them, okay, you got an objection, let's vote on it. You're not going to win. And I'm sorry if somebody really wants to get bent out of shape, they can do that. It's entertaining, I suppose, but I don't care. Commissioner Folks.
Not that it matters, but it is partially what it sounds like, a lot of work that's been done to request this group as a whole. What would appease city council? What's gonna give them? Does it matter? It feels like it matters.
So the only thing that city council wants to know is what has the subcommittee achieved in the 2 years that they gave us? Because we had to specifically request that 2 years rather than a 6-month charter. So the 2 years, they want to know, what have we accomplished? And I think, to Jack's point, we can say that we are nearing completion of a draft that will go before police commission. I really don't anticipate city council having a whole lot of questions or objections to it. Honestly, I think it's the police commission that will.
Oh,
Yeah. City council won't care.
Right.
It's a
They will tell us
tiny
thank
little
you for
part
our
of their
service.
job.
okay. Then I'm focusing on the wrong. Okay, I'm wow. Okay.
So there are at least 2 commissioners who are not in support of this subcommittee as a whole. And so there's, I think, for us to try to push this through without giving them the opportunity to weigh in can be perceived as underhanded. Now, that being said, it's a democracy, and so the majority rules. If more of them say that it can't go forward, then we're dead in the water anyway. We can't take it to city council or put it on our report to city council. If more of them say this is a good idea, let's look forward to discussing it in June. Then if our June POCO meeting is before our report to city council, then that would work out well. And hopefully we could have a finished product by then, and it's a moot point. I just, right now, given our current membership roster of police commission, I could foresee strenuous objections coming from at least 3 of the commissioners.
Wow.
Really?
Okay.
What are the, sorry,
Go ahead.
what are the strenuous, so far it's just a policy, right? It's a policy draft. What are the extreme objections? Where do you see those?
I think exception for at least 2 of them, exception will be taken to the impression being given that we're all of a mind. Because
Okay.
we are certainly not. And depending on how much weight they carry, they may be able to sway the majority into saying we are not of a mind.
Well, in either case, it doesn't change the work that you did, or that you created a draft. And that you've brought that draft to the police commission. You can then, based on that information, go back to council saying that you brought this preliminary draft to the police commission and recognize it's going to need to be worked farther at that level, because new concerns have been raised, or whatever you need to, or maybe it won't at all. You may end up with people abstaining from it because this wasn't their thing, or you may have people that, I mean, so far, your policy, what it does is it just connects all the dots of all the other policies that exist.
But they don't exist. There are no written policies on any of this, and that's the problem.
Well,
but there are procedures and there are practices that do exactly all of this, or just about all of this.
So you're just
I'm not willing to be deterred by the theoretical possibility that some people may have what seem to me to be irrational objections to saying that this is how far we've got. We're not saying this is what the commission has agreed on. We're saying this is how far in the process we've gotten, and that is a fact. That's not an opinion. That's not something we're putting over on anybody. And the fact is, we've gotten this far, but we have not gotten to the point of consideration by the police commission. That's an automatic, and that's going to come, and that's where anybody with any objection can raise it. We're not sliding something past them. We're just saying, you know, it's coming. You're going to see it, you know, and then we'll figure out whether we like it or not. And yes, if people want to act dumb, they have my permission.
Was it the intention to create a policy? Was it the intention of the subcommittee to create a policy? If it was, then you carried out your mandate. They don't have to like it or dislike it. You just had to carry out what you were asked to do. And so you basically followed your mission to the conclusion that you thought made sense to the subcommittee. And now you're bringing that back to the commission. They don't have to agree with it. They gave you this job, you carried out the job. And if at that point, the police commission gives you different direction, then that's their job. And so I feel like you're at some point, this is the conclusion you've come to. You don't know until you take it to them whether or not you're in alignment with what the commission wants you to do or not. And you're at the end. I mean, we're at the end of this 2-year period of time. So it makes sense that you would provide them, this is the conclusion we came to, at least in my mind. And then you get their direction and feedback, and then you can make your next step. But until you have done that, then you don't have a next step, right?
And we're the police commission. Our job specifically is to make policy recommendations. It's nothing else. It's not to administer the department. It's not to handle citizen complaints. It's not to make pronouncements about what how the police should function or about a particular incident. It's to recommend policy. So that's what we do.
Okay. Well, my objection has been stated for the record, and this is a democracy, and I will actually probably vote along with you, but it had to say it for the record.
So.
All right. So did we moved to present to police commission, or did we get held up with the question of how we're presenting it to police commission?
It has been moved. It is on the floor. I don't believe we have voted yet. That we have the draft 1021 policy in the next packet to the police commission. That in my report from the subcommittee, I say that we have gotten where we have gotten to, and that we anticipate there will be further work needed before we have a final draft to present to the commission for its consideration, revision, rejection, replacement, or approval.
Okay.
And that's it.
Clarifying
Amelia.
question. Thank you. In its current state, we're not going to be meeting between now and our next meeting to update or make changes to the draft as is, correct?
As far as I know.
Okay. I just wanted to check.
Did I miss any meeting?
I don't know
There's
if
been so
it's
many
out
meetings
of the
notified.
question to have a meeting in May, but that would it would depend heavily on what we have for staffing abilities. So I would say let's not count on having a meeting in May, but I don't think it's entirely off the table yet.
Okay. So as is, draft as is. And I want to take this moment and thank you all very much for being so accommodating and meeting this evening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.
Hey,
We're glad to
really
have
glad you're here.
Thanks.
Missed you.
Chair, I would think we could go ahead and call it to a vote.
Let's call it a vote? Let's do it. Everybody in favor?
I,
Okay. And since we have no other new business that anyone had brought to my attention, I'm going to rule the meeting is adjourned.
nice. Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank
dinner,
you.
everybody.
Have a good evening.
Thank
Okay.
you all.